What's up guys, it's Endymion, and today I want to dive deep and look into one of the most anticipated Souls-like action RPGs right now, Black Myth: Wukong. But more importantly than that, I want to take an investigative look into whether this game is truly going to live up to the insane hype surrounding it, or if it's all just smoke and mirrors. Of course, give me your opinions in the comments, and now let's begin decrypting the mystery of Black Myth: Wukong. The game was originally announced and the entire internet exploded in hype, which is nothing new as we've had this level of hype before with announcements like Cyberpunk 2077 or No Man's Sky. However, immediately upon seeing Wukong's trailer, my skeptic spidey sense began to tingle and I started to wonder if what we were seeing was actually going to be, well, the real game. Now, the info I'm about to present is rumor and could be false. However, the info surrounding this game is so tight-lipped that this leak was too tantalizing to not talk about. So there's a YouTuber named Ranton, his content is amazing, and he apparently may have someone on the inside looking into all things Black Myth: Wukong. So here's what we know, allegedly so far, and it's not all good. Starting off, I want to share some alarming info, which is that one of the developers who worked on the game's level design had played Wukong back in August 2021, and stated that the game only had one actual fully playable level that was considered launch quality. This dev then goes on to say that the rest of the game has basically no cutscenes, enemies, or bosses that are anywhere near the quality of this single level. Now, of course, this was a year ago, things could change, but this does feed into my fear that most of what we've seen of Wukong is mostly proof of concept instead of actual, well, real gameplay. Although we don't know how far along the rest of the game is, but again, only a year ago and one single level is done. That's a big yikes. However, these trailers would likely be made to spark interest in investors to further development, which leads into the next leak. Apparently, due to the hype, many Chinese investors have been interested in getting their hands on the potential success of Wukong. One of these investors is none other than the biggest gaming giant in the world right now, even bigger than PlayStation or Xbox if you can believe it, and that's of course Tencent. For those unaware, Tencent is a Chinese monolith of a company that owns shares in a ridiculous amount of gaming companies, and you've almost definitely have played something they own or partially do. Companies like Riot Games, who makes League of Legends for example, is entirely owned by Tencent. They also own 40% of Epic Games, the makers of Fortnite, and Wukong is made on Unreal Engine 5, which is also made by Epic, so Tencent owns that too in a sense. They also own Turtle Rock Studios, the people who made Left 4 Dead and Back 4 Blood, and besides big studios that they own, they have smaller stakes in companies like Don't Nod, Bloober Team, Ubisoft, Remedy, Tequila Works, Clay Entertainment, and many more. So basically, Tencent as of now owns roughly 5% of Black Myth: Wukong's developer, which Tencent does quite commonly, so they always have a hand in something in case it skyrockets and profits go nuclear. Why this is slightly alarming is that Tencent is known for pushing microtransactions in their games quite often, and Game Science, the makers of Wukong, have not only made two mobile games in the past, one being called Crimson Tide, the other is called, and I'll butcher this name, sorry, Bai Jiang Jing. Which, suspiciously, while making this video, I could not really find any gameplay of either of these two mobile games, which is never a good sign. But Game Science has said in the past that it will explore whether or not to add microtransactions to Black Myth, which is not good. So to summarize, the biggest media giant in China owns part of Game Science, the makers of Wukong, and they may be pushing for microtransactions in a game that will likely be full price at launch. Lovely, like we need more of that in today's market. The next leak suggests that the developers are woefully understaffed, and beyond actual manpower to make the game, they also lack developers with solid experience as well. Allegedly, one of the devs who worked on combat and character design either left or was fired due to their lack of experience, and now this ex-dev claimed it was due to the workflow of the studio and that many of the creative decisions were clashing behind the scenes. Awesome. Great. Going further into this workplace schism, Game Science is apparently extremely picky with choosing who gets to work on Black Myth, which is again slowing down development. Even though, according to this anonymous source, there's tons of people applying for jobs to work on Wukong, but while this may seem like a good thing, likely it's a quantity over quality dilemma for Game Science. Maybe there's a lot of people applying, but these applicants don't have the experience or skill to meet the level of what Game Science wants for Black Myth. This has also apparently led to a considerable amount of effort and time being used to create authentic Chinese assets for the game, which is the next problem. Apparently, they've been trying to recreate a metric F-ton of assets since 2020, and this has led to various out-of-studio trips across China so Game Science can get the authentic references needed. Although this is good for authenticity, it is also slowing down development again, and devs at Game Science are apparently frustrated with how little assets are included with Unreal Engine, leading to literal years of development time being used just to create the environments as authentically as possible. And this authenticity might be more than Game Science can handle, because when you see footage, you can see Wukong taking the form of other creatures, which in the original story, Wukong has 72 earthly forms, which may be something Game Science is trying to create for their game as well. As if not already being way in over their heads in terms of scope, talent, and resources, having to create 72 unique gameplay mechanics and models for one single character in a single game, well, all I can say is good luck to them, cause they'll need it. Although they could circumvent this by making Wukong assume the forms of bosses and other enemies to lessen the load, which is apparently a mechanic in-game where you beat a boss and then can become them, which is smart, so maybe that's how they'll juggle this whole 72 form mechanic thingamajig that they got going on. But now let's end this leak with some positivity. This last rumor states that Game Science will be back to show new gameplay and features during China Joy 2022, which is basically E3 but in, well, China. This event is scheduled to begin on August 27th, 2022 to September 2nd, so if true, we'll be seeing the latest from this game there. All in all, I'm worried about Black Myth Wukong. While I wouldn't say the game is in development hell, it's very clearly in some sort of digital purgatory where so many moving parts are slowing the entire process down. And while what we've seen does look great, hell, I mean it looks amazing, I have to be realistic and say that I think, which is that if this game is going to hit its supposed true form, it's going to take years. And what's even more weird is that Game Science has stated they're targeting a 2023 window. So maybe it's all going well and there's nothing to worry about, but we'll see. We've been burnt in the past on big hyped up games that promised so much and flew way too close to the sun, and we need to remember that Game Science isn't a super proven, well-known studio either. They're not Sony Santa Monica or From Software is what I'm saying. So Black Myth Wukong is either going to go two ways. It's either going to be the next big Souls-like that shakes the very industry and leads the way, or it'll crash and burn and be added to the pantheon of games that didn't live up to their hype. I guess time will only tell. And that, my friends, is what we know so far with this supposed leak. What do you think? Are you excited, cautiously optimistic, or believe there's no way in hell they deliver what's promised? Let me know in the comments. And I'll link Ranton's video in the description if you want to see it too. And if you like this video, consider subscribing and sharing it. Thanks, it helps the algorithm and all that internet nonsense. Thanks to my patrons for their continued support as always, and I'm Endymion. Back to Dark Souls 2 I go. I'll see you in the next one.